Yes, Geordies, welcome back to another episode. Right, first of all, I'm going to do my best to not hold this microphone because my hands go absolutely wild in these videos. But today I wanted to do something where we can look forward, we can get excited about what's to come in the future. And that is one man that hasn't even played in black and white. That is Yoane Wissa. The reason why I'm doing this video is because I've looked back in my previous 3 videos and I sound like I'm whinging and complaining. Am I disappointed with the performances? Of course I am. Am I disappointed with the results? Of course I am. Am I disappointed with the way Eddie Howe has approached these games and not been willing to change or adapt or drop underperforming players? Of course I am. Do I want Eddie Howe out? I'm going to be honest, I'm not at that stage yet. I think Eddie Howe has deserved the right to go through a little bit of a bad time. And let's be honest, I said this during the summer window as well. Nothing in life, especially in football, is linear. We've had a trajectory that has just went upwards and upwards and upwards under the Saudi ownership and Eddie Howe's management. There was going to come a time where we just went stale a little bit. This was always going to happen. Now, there is underlying factors why. You can look at injuries. You can look at underperforming players. And you can look at directly at Eddie Howe himself. So I'm not at the point that I want Eddie Howe out, but I've read all of your comments and I appreciate everything you do, the support, the interaction. So I just want to say thank you. And also, I would never, ever, ever tell somebody to change their opinion. You're absolutely within your right to want Eddie Howe out. We can agree to disagree. I'm not at that stage yet, but I can understand and I respect those who are. And to be perfectly honest, when I read your comments, you bring valid points. It's not just, he's shit, I want him out of here. It's, he's shit, I want him out of here, and this is why. So you bring absolutely valid points. And who am I to tell you to change your opinion? Do you know what I mean? Your opinion is just as valid as mine. Just because I'm sitting with a camera and a microphone doesn't make me any better than you guys. So please continue to give your opinions in the comments. But today I don't want to sit here and just be like, this is bad, this is terrible. I want to look at what's to come in the future. Today's episode is all about one guy that hasn't played in black and white, and that is Yoane Wissa. Tomorrow's episode is going to be the return of Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento. So for that reason, if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and come and be part of the Mango Fruit Basket. Now, I know what you're wondering. Why have I got cuts in me top at the minute? Well, just before this video, I was fighting with a lion. That's just how I roll. That's just what the big man does. That's what us mangoes do. Do not mess with the mangoes because I taught that lion a lesson. But look, Newcastle United lost Alexander Isak in the summer. Now, I don't want to make this video about Alexander Isak, but he is going to be about 3 minutes in this video. I will talk about Alexander Isak because I want to talk about the difference Eddie Howe has given to him and what changed from last season and the season before, and why he was so prolific last season, and why Yoane Wissa could eventually step in the shoes of Alexander Isak. Now, the first thing I want to say, I don't think our away form is just down to Alexander Isak being missing, because within this calendar year, we've only won 4 games away from home in the Premier League. So even with Alexander Isak, we were not performing or enjoying good results away from home. But I do think the lack of creation has resulted in the missing of a profile like Alexander Isak because of Eddie Howe's unwillingness to adapt his system. You don't even need to change your formation. I'm not even asking him to change to a 4-2-3-1. Just change your system and the instructions because of the players you've got in hand. Now, if any of you guys are regular watchers to my videos, probably not, and I said this a lot last season, the best thing about Alexander Isak and the best thing he brought in Newcastle United wasn't in possession. It was his movement. Alexander Isak, whether we like him or not, whether we think he's a dickhead or not, because I do, one of his most valuable things is his movement. His movement is one of the best, most intelligent in recent seasons. Now, I promise we're just going to spend a little time talking about Alexander Isak because even his movement in that final third created space, but he did it in a different way to Nick Woltemade. It was all about those positionings and direct little bursts of speeds in behind the defensive line. That stretches the game and allows your midfield to move up 5 yards up the pitch. So Alexander Isak's movement and ability to run the channels was impacting us when we were going forwards, and that was creating more space for the likes of Jacob Murphy, Anthony Gordon, Bruno, Sandro Tonali, whoever it may be, to get into advanced areas. Now, I often spoke about Alexander Isak standing offside, and the reason he did this is so he could be on the blind spot of defenders. Once you get in the blind spot of defenders, they've got no idea of your intentions, so you can manipulate them in any type of way you want. Now, the thing about Alexander Isak, he didn't have to get involved in play. He did sometimes, but it was all about attacking space and making sure he finished the chances rather than starting the chances. Now, the reason why I do think Eddie Howe deserves the time to get it right, because he has improved players. Now, I want you to take a look at Alexander Isak's shot map from 2023-24 season. Now, the things I want to highlight here is inside the 6-yard box. I often speak about the best strikers do their work in between the posts because you're in a better shot location and you can deliver a better shot selection. Alexander Isak that season scored 4 goals in the 6-yard box during the 2023-24 season, which ranked him 25th in Europe's top 5 leagues. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, what's this got to do with Newcastle United? We need to get in that box more. Now, one thing Eddie Howe did do, Alexander Isak, after that season, came out and spoke in an interview and revealed that he had conversations with Eddie Howe about becoming more ruthless in the 6-yard box. He went on to say Eddie Howe encouraged him to add a more poacher's instinct to his repertoire, and that was all about focusing on positioning and instincts to convert crosses and rebounds. Eddie Howe wanted more, Alexander Isak wanted more, and Eddie Howe knew how to get more out of him. The next season, Alexander Isak doubled the amount of goals he scored in the 6-yard box. He scored 8 goals. That was second in Europe's top 5 league, only behind Emmanuel Omega of Strasbourg. So what I'm trying to say is, although Alexander Isak was brilliant for us, Eddie Howe knew and had a clear way and vision on how to get more out of him. So then I start thinking, should he do that with Nick Woltemade? And Nick Woltemade is a different type of striker to Alexander Isak, and we've spoke about this before. So then it got us thinking, who else is returning from injury? That is Yoane Wissa. So then I start looking at the data, statistics, and what I think of Yoane Wissa and what he could bring in this Newcastle United side. And would it be similar to Alexander Isak? So we're going to look at the evolution of Yoane Wissa at Brentford. Look at the change of role, change of system, change of identity. And then we're going to look at if he could play alongside Nick Woltemade. And Yoane Wissa himself is somebody that has adapted his game while at Brentford. And as you can see, over the past 4 seasons, there's been a steady progression into the more central areas of where he's taking his touches. During the 2021-22 season, the majority of his touches came in the left-hand side. 22-23 season was quite similar, but a little bit more inside. And then from 2023-24 season, that's when the progression really started to become, and he started to get into more dangerous areas and taking his touches more centrally. So you can clearly see the shift and change in style and where he's operating on the pitch. But the beautiful thing about that, not only has it progressed him into a more central area and more dangerous inside the box and picking up more touches inside the box, but it's also given him a better shot location, which has also improved his shot selection. Because if we have a look at where he's taking his shots from, you can see a similar sort of progression. He's evolved his game into taking more shots from key areas, which has ultimately improved his shots per 90. As you can see, he's went from a 2.3 shots per 90 up to a 2.8 shots per 90. So that shift in mentality to get in and around the box, to get into more dangerous areas, key areas, to get shots off, has ultimately improved his record and his output when it comes to scoring. Yoane Wissa has involved himself into a deadly finisher. He is incredible inside the penalty box. Little sharp touches, gets his shot off quickly. He has become a top-class finisher. Clinical, his movement sharp, he doesn't need many touches, he gets his shots off with little backlift, and he's incredibly instinctive. And that has allowed him to improve and evolve his goal record each season. 2021-22 season, he finished with 7 goals, 1 assist. He had similar numbers the next season. 2023-24 season was his first season of hitting double figures. And then last season, he was simply outstanding, hitting 19 non-penalty goals. And there has been a nice variation. 25 goals with his right foot, 12 goals with his left foot, and 8 headed goals. Now, as you can see from the graphics, he's evolved into a more conventional striker, more of a traditional striker. He's got similar patterns in terms of movement as Alexander Isak. He doesn't need to get involved in play. He doesn't actually take many touches per 90. In fact, last season, he ranked bottom for touches per 90 at Brentford. He doesn't need to get involved in play. He's all about finishing those chances. And that's exactly the type of profile that Eddie Howe wants in his team. He's got explosive pace. He's got that quick burst of speed over short distances, and he doesn't mind playing on the last man. His movement is intelligent. He doesn't mind running the channels, and it's all about exploiting gaps in the opposition defence. In fact, Yoane Wissa and Bryan Mbeumo struck up a similar partnership to Jacob Murphy and Alexander Isak. They were the second most prolific striking partnership at creating opportunities. As you can see from the graphic, it's broken down into player 1, player 2. Player 1 is more the provider, the server. Player 2 is more the goal scorer. Only Jacob Murphy and Alexander Isak had more shots created through player 1 providing to player 2 than Bryan Mbeumo and Yoane Wissa. So just like Alexander Isak, Yoane Wissa's goals often result from impeccable timing. Now, what's the one thing missing from Newcastle United this season? It's us being direct, aggressive with the ball, counter-attacking, attacking space with pace and speed. We've seen none of that this season. Yoane Wissa thrived in a similar system last season. Across the last 2 full seasons, no team has scored more goals from sequences that began in their own defensive half and involved between 0 to 2 passes than Brentford. So Brentford scored the most goals across the last 2 seasons from picking up the ball in their defensive third and having less than 2 passes until they scored. So they were a direct counter-attacking team, and that's a system that Yoane Wissa thrives off. And Newcastle United thrived off a similar style last season. Newcastle's 8.6 XG created from fast breaks was only behind Liverpool last season. And more positive reading and why Yoane Wissa would suit our style, Newcastle scored a league high of 13 goals from open play crosses. Wissa's timing and ability to recollaborate his runs to meet passes in wide areas makes him a good fit. Even if we have a look at some graphics on how he creates space in his own movement and attack space, as you can see as Kevin Shorter picks up a ball here, Yoane Wissa's already thinking about how can I stretch the opposition. He's not looking to get involved in play. He's not looking to be an option very close for a simple pass to Kevin Shorter. He's looking to break the lines, looking to get in behind, looking to stretch the pitch. This is what Newcastle United were built on last season. Now, this is no criticism on Nick Woltemade because we are going to talk about him very shortly. But as you can see, it allows Kevin Shorter to turn on the ball on the half turn, open up and play on his second touch. As I always say, the movement in football kills. The movement in football dictates the pass. If Yoane Wissa doesn't make that movement, Kevin Shorter just probably takes a touch and plays backwards. And Yoane Wissa brings so much good quality anticipation off the ball. As you can see, Bryan Mbeumo goes up a header with Murillo. He's got no right to win that header, but still Yoane Wissa's anticipating the ball, gets in on goal, and it's a lovely finish. And this is exactly what I was talking about. Trying to break the lines, trying to stretch the lines, trying to get in behind. If it's not going to be Nick Woltemade, this is exactly what our wide players should be doing. Here's another example of Mikkel Damsgaard picking up the ball. And look, he's inside his own defensive third, but Yoane Wissa's not even looking at what Mikkel Damsgaard's doing. Only his thought in his mind is, how can I get in a good position to score goals? Now, he's not even attracting himself to the ball, which is a beautiful thing because sometimes you need to stretch the pitch to make the pitch big, and that allows Mikkel Damsgaard more time in possession. So Yoane Wissa's doing the right thing here, not getting attracted towards the ball, but more focusing on how can I get into a good position in that final third. And if we move it on to this sequence, Yoane Wissa picks up the ball on the halfway line. He finds Bryan Mbeumo out wide, but what he does brilliantly is get himself into a good position. Now, Yoane Wissa is clever enough to pause his run while Bryan Mbeumo gets into a dangerous area where he can deliver. Now, what Yoane Wissa is excellent at is finding and dashing into 5 yards of space. And if you just look at his movement here, his movement alone makes up Bryan Mbeumo's decision for him. A lot of players in that Bryan Mbeumo position would cross the ball. Because Yoane Wissa is making that little dash behind the defensive line, it makes up Bryan Mbeumo's decision for him. He gets into a good position and finds the back of the net. Even if we take it to his box movement, he's got such intelligent movement, always looking to get in front of his man to not allow his marker to get goal side. And that's where many of his goals come from. And that's why he's able to finish first time in a lot of opportunities. But I just want you to look at this image and look at his positioning here. He's not even involved in play, but his positioning is impacting the game because he's creating a one-on-one situation. Now, he doesn't get involved in play, which is a beautiful thing because his thought is all about how can I get in the best position to finish chances. And this position here leads to this opportunity where he's able to create a one-on-one scenario with the goalkeeper. So it's all about drifting into half spaces, attacking the space behind the defensive line and playing on the last man, because as you can see from this image, he's ready to attack the space once Mikael Damsgaard receives the ball. But even when he's in possession, he also has that instincts to play forwards. And as you can see, he can do a bit in possession as well. So it's all about that pace, power, rapid acceleration that makes him a threat in behind and in one-on-one situations. He's a confident carrier of the ball, but it's where he does his best work in between the posts in the penalty area. And we've seen that evolution from him over the years, and he's now become a more complete striker. Sharp instincts in front of goal, often in the right place at the right time. Very reminiscent of Jermaine Defoe, a player who excels at converting chances with minimal touches. Now, he's also an aggressive presser off the ball. Now, the reason why I made that video yesterday and spoke about an in-possession tactic of having two strikers is to benefit Nick Woltemade, because if you look at Nick Woltemade over his time at Stuttgart, where he had his best season, the in-possession statistics, he was consistently partnered with a striker. I'm going to make that image bigger for you to see. As you can see, he spends a majority of the time in possession next to a partner. So when he's isolated, he doesn't do his best work. Now, this is where Yoane Wissa can come on, because Nick Woltemade has got that profile where he likes to drop deep, attract defenders towards him, and that will create space for Yoane Wissa to exploit. Nick Woltemade can do his dancing on the ball. They can form a beautiful partnership. Get a room, will you? But there is a way and a scenario where Nick Woltemade and Yoane Wissa can play together. Now, can they strike up that little man, big man duo? Let's think about what Nick Woltemade is. He's a hybrid forward. He's not really a number 9. He's like a 9.5. And he's comfortable receiving under pressure, linking midfield to attack. Now, Nick Woltemade has a lot of involvement on the ball. In fact, he's having double the touches per 90 than Yoane Wissa, which makes him a high-volume progressive passer and a shot-creating actions. Whereas Yoane Wissa is more of a conventional striker, not a second striker. All of his 34 goal involvements last season came inside the penalty area. He's elite in moving in behind, shot finishing, instinctive reactions and innovative finishes. Now, the reason why I think it could work in Newcastle United is because Brian Mbeumo had the most crosses in the Premier League last season. Anthony Elanga had the 4th most crosses in the Premier League last season. Newcastle United have provided the 3rd most crosses in the Premier League this season. Yoane Wissa scored the most goals directly from open play crosses last season with 6. That is 1/3 of his 19 goals last season. Now, his movement and his goals suggest that he's more of an Alexander Isak type of striker than a Nick Woltemade. So we could absolutely play with two as a strike force. But what I think Eddie Howe will do, and the only reason why I think this, is because he's come out and said he doesn't play with a number 10. Even if we compare Nick Woltemade's movement to Yoane Wissa's movement, the only similar comparison is support and runs. But support and runs are very important because they're crucial to creating space for attacking patterns to thrive. The main areas I can see on there is runs in behind. As you can see, Yoane Wissa makes plenty more runs in behind than Nick Woltemade, but also ahead of the ball runs. Yoane Wissa has almost doubled the amount of head of ball runs than Nick Woltemade. What I found very fascinating is Stuttgart ranked 17th out of 18 teams for direct attacks. So Nick Woltemade is trying to change into a new style of team, which will probably take time to get used to. Whereas Wissa played in a direct counter-attacking team like Newcastle United last season, so he's more accustomed to the system. But I've also had a look at the numbers from Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento last season, and boy, will they make a difference. But the point of this video is to highlight that good times will come. Yes, it's doom and gloom now, but the return of Yoane Wissa and then Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall will absolutely improve our style. Now, I'm not saying drop Nick Woltemade, because there is a world where they do play together. You can even have Yoane Wissa playing on the left and having them coming inside when you've got Lewis Hall attacking the space. But you can also play Nick Woltemade just in behind Yoane Wissa. And I think the longer we continue losing playing a 4-3-3, the more Eddie Howe has got no choice but to try and adapt his system. But I want to hear your thoughts. Are you excited for the return of Yoane Wissa? It's not even a return, for the inclusion of Yoane Wissa, because he hasn't even kicked the ball for us yet. So I want to hear your thoughts if you're excited for that. And do you think Eddie Howe will turn this around? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I just want to say, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And until next time, away the lads.